Well. I was just going to try to take a couple days off, take a deep breath, just on the golf course, enjoying the sun, thinking, I'm going to be done before Dion kicks off, get home at about 5 o'clock, shower, watch a little football, and boom, 13th hole, I get 17 texts, 8 updates. Brandon Aiyuk has finally signed his contract. This thing has been exhausting. And as Adam Schefter just said, this contract that he just signed has been on the table since August 10th. The same contract for 3 weeks. And it was clear, I'm a sucker for these press conferences, especially the GM ones that all happen after they cut down the 53-man roster. And I watched 3 or 4 last night. Everyone was really happy. Caserio, great mood. John Schneider on top of the world. It's just Chris Ballard, a lot of good vibes around the league. Why? Everyone's 0-0. Most teams relatively healthy. And if you think your team's decent, you're like, we got a pretty good chance to make the playoffs. We got a good chance to win the division. Make a run. I like my squad. Everyone feels that way right now, except the Niners. Because when you watch Kyle Shanahan, they did 2 separate press conferences. Kyle talked, then John talked. It was not positive. And it was clear when John Lynch, who is a Hall of Fame player, and it was said multiple times, like, I've been through this. Personally, I've seen my teammates go through this. It's a business. He understands. But we've jumped the shark now. It's time to play ball, is essentially what he said, which everyone in 49er land took it like they're going to start fining him. This is not acceptable. You have a contract offer. Hell, we even tried to acquiesce when you demanded a trade. We had trade offers and we had accepted the compensation. The Patriots were willing to pay you more than this. I don't blame you. You don't want to go there. That's fine. But how about the Browns? We were ready to drive you to the airport for a second in Amari Cooper. He's like, nope. Don't blame him. Why? Because taking a little less and playing for the 49ers is actually more valuable for Brandon Aiyuk. If this guy was on some random non-winning team, we would not have been discussing it like this. Because these contracts are all based on production, fair or not. So even if internally, and listen, most of us believe it's human nature, we're a little better than we actually are. You kind of have to have that to be successful in any industry, especially in something as competitive and as lucrative as football. So if you ask Brandon Aiyuk, if you're having cocktails with him or sitting with him the last month, do you think he truly believes he's like way worse than Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and CeeDee Lamb? No, he doesn't, which has been a problem for the 49ers. He's kind of been living in this hypothetical la-la land. It's like, based on your production in our offense, which works, you catch 75 balls a year. And you're a really good player. You're a winning player. But DJ Moore signs for over $80 million guaranteed. When you look at his resume, he's played with quarterbacks that are basically me and you. And he's catching 95 balls a year. It's like, it's not really comparable. We can't give you that same contract. We're going to give you less. And this is the option. And now, because the amount of money on these contracts, I've supported these guys for not risking injury in a practice when you have 70, 80, $100 million guaranteed on the line. But like Adam Schefter, this contract has been available for 3 weeks. $75 million guaranteed, give or take. The number might be a little off. Obviously, the full numbers, 4 years, $120 million. I never care about that. It's always about the guarantee. And I also saw that he gets like $45 million in cash flow over the next calendar year, even a little less. That's an incredible contract for a guy, again, who's never caught more than 80 balls. And because of the way Kyle Shanahan coaches, probably won't. Like, he's not going to have these 100-catch seasons, especially with Kittle, now Jawan Jennings. They throw the ball to the running back a lot in Christian McCaffrey. Jordan Mason, I think, is a really good player. If you like fantasy, get on Jordan Mason. And Deebo Samuel, who is like this hybrid that they can just hand him the ball and throw a bunch of screens to. So it was like, bro, this number's not going to change. And they had enough. And they were ready, which doesn't happen that often anymore, to go old school. We're going to find you. We're going to make this different. We don't want to do this because it's lose-lose for everybody. It sucks. and they have two guys holding out, and they're just not equals. One guy is the greatest left tackle, or one of them, definitely in his era, but top 5 left tackle in the history of football. And if you look at the 49ers offensive line, it's not that great. So he kind of has them, even though he has several years left on his contract, but there's no guaranteed money. All these new contracts. Trent Williams has the Niners by the balls. He wants a lot of money. I think someone on ESPN said he wants to get paid. Don't blame him. 35, 36 years old, only have so much football left, which is kind of challenging to the 49ers. Like, we give you another 50, 60 guaranteed over the next couple of years. What if you just retire after a year? It's a little tricky situation, but we know it. You know it. Everyone knows it. We need you. Aiyuk, they're like, yeah, we'll trade you for Amari in a second. Done deal. Plug and play. See ya. We'll drive. You want us to drive you to the airport? And you got cold feet. So once he poo-poos all the trades, the Steelers have nothing to give the Niners. So that deal was never going to take place. Washington, because let's face it, they have no business trading anything for Brandon Aiyuk. This season, I know everyone's high on Washington. They easily could win 6 games. Take a deep breath, let it play out, keep your assets. Hell, if he becomes a free agent one day, sign him. But they are not in position to do that. And rightfully so, they didn't. They didn't really get involved. So it's like, bro, you had 2 options. You're not going to get traded. Now we're just staring at each other. You have all this money on the table. We're not going to budge. This is what we value. And no one can cry poor for you that this is the option. And here's the other thing. You're a productive player. You've been healthy. Most of these wide receivers, I said it about CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson, they signed 4-year contracts. They're going to get another deal. Think how many wide receivers over the last 25 years that thrived in their 30s, especially their early 30s. So it's like, you have a good 3 or 4 years, you'll get another massive contract. Even though it'll be fascinating to watch how these wide receiver contracts work, if there eventually is a tipping point, but we're not there at all. Like, it's the money's flowing for that position. So, I mean, just a couple years ago, I guess it was like 6 or 7 now, Cousins signed a historic deal at quarterback. I think he got $85 million, all guaranteed, 3-year contract. Now the second tier wide receiver like DJ Moore and Aiyuk are in that world. CeeDee Lambs and Jeffersons and Jamar Chase, whenever he signs a contract, are way by it. But this did not have to happen. And sometimes it's like, the team was being weird. This is on the player 100%. Being stubborn, not understanding his value, not understanding like what the market is for your production. It was crazy. It was insanity. Like, Trent Williams is a true holdout, which makes sense. I'm a great player. I feel well underpaid. I have no guaranteed money. We got to figure something out. Reddick is this weird holdout, like, bro, what are we doing? And Aiyuk was this hold in where they just stared at each other. And the Niners were pretty player friendly. Let him come to practice, kind of walk around, be weird. It was just bizarre. It was awkward. Now, somehow the 49ers have handled awkward situations pretty smoothly. I was at the practice a couple years ago when Jimmy Garoppolo was throwing on the side because they weren't able to trade him yet because of his injury. Then they end up re-signing him. So they've handled these weird situations. They ended up in the NFC Championship that year. But it's hard to argue that no good team in the league has had a weirder camp. There are just weird vibes. Now, if you win against the Jets Monday night, all of this is forgotten. Hit the ground running. It doesn't matter. Last year, Nick Bosa held out longer than this. Week 1, the Steelers, they kicked their ass. Whatever. Who cares? They're in the Super Bowl, right? But this was a situation that it didn't make any sense. And I text a lot of people around the league. They're like, what is going on? This is crazy. And this didn't need to happen. But now it's over, and it's on him to be ready to roll and not let this linger, not be bitter about signing for, over $75 million and getting $30 million a year, which I always think is a little fake. But regardless, if you play well, you make a lot of money. Like Deebo Samuel's kind of been up and down since he signed his big contract. You know what? He's received every penny of that contract. Every penny. And if he has a big season, he'll get another contract after this year. That's the way it works. So the Niners checked one box. Now they got to figure out Trent Williams, and they have an extra day because they play on Monday night. But I think this signals like you got to try to get that done by the start of next work week, because I don't see how you can play them if you get it done next Friday. I think in a perfect world, they would like to get it done in the next 24, 48 hours. Get it done before the college football games on Saturday. So you get him back out, you get him physical, you just start getting him his mind right. Now, he's a veteran player. Obviously, he's just an all-time freak, but sometimes you get worried about the bigger guys, like what is their cardio shape? Could he just handle week one? Listen, a lot of question marks with the Jets. One question mark that does not exist, they got a lot of dudes up front that are fast. So, being in cardio shape, it's kind of important. And you just got to kind of keep your fingers crossed that he's been working out hard and he's ready to roll. Deshaun Jackson mentioned like a week ago that he thought this thing was going to end, and then it didn't end. So this has been just a bizarre time. It really is. I think Schefter said today on TV he's never seen anything like this. This is an unprecedented hold in that resulted in what should have resulted 3 weeks ago, a contract that was just on the table. I think it's a good lesson. Sometimes, and you hear a lot of people very successful in business say this, sometimes you got to remove your ego. You got to remove your ego and just take a deep breath, take a step back and go, this is pretty good. There's a lot of money. And if I go on to excel with the 49ers, I make a lot of money off the field as well. It's one of the biggest brands in the league. I'm a star wide receiver because of the brand, not because of my 75 catches. I mean, you're a good player, but there were clear tiers, and he wasn't on the top tier. So this just shows you, man, to me, what's crazy is forever when they changed the CBA and added that 5th-year option to these rookie contracts. It was like, oh, we got good players under contract for 5 years. It's kind of thrown out the window, because all these guys that become Pro Bowlers or all pro players, like that 5th-year option, they laugh at, and it's become a problem for the team, right? And I think all these teams are so scared to kind of go old school and just start fining you and making a tough deal. You have to wonder if sometime soon that these hold-ins, if they keep resulting in this situation, because I respect the holdout. Like double middle fingers, I am not showing up until we get this figured out. I respect that. The hold-in, and I've said this before, and I might have to change my tune. I'm like, I think that's the right way to go. I don't know. After watching this, you're kind of a huge distraction. At least CeeDee Lamb or Trent Williams or whoever, if you're just holding out, you're out of sight, out of mind. Everyone knows, they need you and your importance. But it's like, I'm drawing a line in the sand here. I'm not stepping foot in the building, on a practice field, in a meeting room until we get this deal done. I can respect that. So I think the hold in, if you're going to do stuff like Brandon Aiyuk, it can be very counterproductive. And it's going to be fascinating. I'm sure he'll give a press conference sometime in the next 3 or 4 or 5 days. The vibe, his mindset, because the 49ers had to feel pretty good if you're going to sign, ultimately, like even give like this, keep this thing on the table. Like, you better not come in bitter. We don't want a guy pissed off because he thinks he got lowballed and is going to pout. I think I said a while back, he might be the first player, first human being in the history of civilization to get this much money and still be angry. Most people, you saw some of these guys sign these contracts, they're in tears, talking about their family, talking about how long they've worked for this moment. I don't know. If you tell me he's kind of sulky, I'd believe you. I hope he's happy. He should be. He just changed the course of his children's life. Like, that's, I don't know how many people you know that have made that much money in any business. Like, personally, no, it's pretty rare. So I hope he's not bitter, because if he is, that'll be a really bad look. Come in, smile, get to work, and see if the 49ers can make another Super Bowl run.